My name is Tony. I am the modern day bard. I enjoy tabletop games. Pathfinder, D&D, Harp, I've played them all, and anyone who's ever played any of these role-playing games always comes away with a handful of remember the time when. These are my D&D stories. Hello and welcome to D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter, and this is the show where I sit here and regale you with all the times of tabletop games do you remember when. Whenever you get together with a group of friends, whenever you get into a club or something that has to do with D&D, Pathfinder, Harp, everybody always walks away with a bunch of stories of that amazing critical that you made, or that super epic fail that sent your character careening towards death, or the time you slayed a god, or the time you slayed the dragon, etc., etc. And I have quite a few of those stories, so here I am. It's just going to be me talking, so you don't actually have to watch this video. So if you enjoy Minecraft, World of Warcraft, if you've got dishes to do, minimize me. All you've got to do is listen to the sultry sound of my voice. Gosh, I guess we should start from the very beginning, as far back as I can remember, with Spoony the Bard. Yes, he is named after the Spoony Bard from Final Fantasy. He is named after Noah Antwiler's Spoony, who was technically named Tandem. So if you've seen the Spoony experiment, it's named after him also. Call me a fanboy, whatever. But, yes, I was about halfway through college in a group called the Gamers Guild, which was a group of about 60-plus people that would get together and play tabletop games. We had a big room and a bunch of little side rooms where you could get 6, 8, 10 people together around these big conference tables. All we had to do was rent it out every week, and we had a constitution of rules to follow. We had room reservations, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards up on campus, so we had nice accommodations and people that had been there for years. There were a bunch of people playing Magic the Gathering, D&D, Pathfinder, Harp, God forbid Harp. There were stacks and stacks of board games everywhere, but mostly me and my little tight-knit group of friends were in one of the side rooms playing D&D 3.5, and this story is all about the one of the first campaigns that we played together called Wicked Master. Now, Wicked Master, if I recall correctly, I've got this little cue card because this was 8 years ago for me, so you'll pardon my memory. I think there were 6 players. It was Spoony the Bard, that was me, a monk whose name was Rhino, Dylan the Paladin, a wizard that I can't remember, a utility sorcerer, and a dwarven defender, and we'll get to him later because he was one of the interesting talking points of this campaign. But we start our story with our DM saying, well, it's going to be a cityscape game with demon hunting and plenty of moving around through the streets and gathering rumors and stuff. So it's going to be a confined space, stay inside the reserve. This is where the whole campaign is going to be. And they were like, okay, well, I'm going to roll a wizard, I'm going to roll a sorcerer, and we ended up with a bunch of damage dealers, except for the sorcerer and myself, the bard. So I was like, okay, nobody's devoting to be a healer, we're going to have to buy a lot of extra potions. The utility sorcerer was for those that don't know, a utility sorcerer or a utility wizard is a wizard that doesn't really take many damaging spells. He'll take like Mage Hand, Flight, Spider Climb, Hold Portal, like he's the Batman of the group. He just can't hurt anybody that well. I think he took like one damaging spell and that was it, but he was our utility sorcerer. And then Spoony the Bard was going to be like our face rogue almost. He had the super high charisma, the super high performance check, the super high diplomacy, all that kind of stuff. He could do pretty much anything that involved talking or interacting with others. He had like a rapier, but I think he only actually pulled it once during the whole campaign, so he was the buffer. In other words, he would pass out buff and dexterity and strength and all the buffs during battle. And I had the added benefit of being in the back of the group, so I didn't take damage very often. But imagine, if you will, just like, a guy in like scarlet with a wide-rimmed hat and a lute, and he's a total ladies' man, etc., etc. And this group was probably one of the most diverse I think I ever had, and I know some of the details of this story are going to be wrong, but count it as embellishment. It was a long time ago, and I've since lost contact with every single one of these people. So one of the more diverse groups I've ever had. We had a black guy, a woman, a high functioning autistic, a hornball, an borderline antisocial disorder guy sitting at the table. So a very, very mixed group, not like the stereotypical big group of like fat mouth breathers that you might expect. And I know well enough 12 years later that's not what a stereotypical D&D group was. But I have, like, in that decade of playing, seen that, wow, that was probably the most like racially diverse, gender diverse, mental capacity diverse group that I had ever had. So we were a motley crew out of character. So in character, it made for an even better adventure because we were all from completely different walks of life, in character and out of character. So I think that made it all the better. And I'm not harping on anybody for being black or being a woman at a D&D table or anything like that. You just, in general, it's usually a bunch of white guys for me because I'm from the middle of Kentucky, the northern capital of the South. So anyway, I'm digging myself a hole. I'm going to stop now. So we end up, like I said, Bard, Monk, Paladin, Wizard, Sorcerer, Dwarven Defender. And Dwarven Defender is just like a tank. So we are gathered by a character that I called Mr. Jameson. And I'm not the DM. I'm acting as a player. So there are 7 people around this table playing this same game. We're gathered by this guy named Mr. Jameson in a city that is half like nasty, lower income, just like, what do I want to say? It's divided like the place at the Berlin Wall. It's just nastiness and ruin on one side, and nice, clean buildings with clean streets and no crime on the other side. And we are gathered by a very rich gentleman who wants to send us on a quest. And he hired each of us specifically because we all bring something interesting to the table, which is just a lazy way of gathering this group of people that got no business being in the same room. But whatever, it's D&D. Let's get the game started. He gathers these 6 people and says that a vault has been broken into. And we go, a vault? You should have invested in a better bank. And he goes, no, this vault contained the pieces of an archdemon called the Wicked Master. And we go, an archdemon? What? Number 1, why would you keep all the pieces in the same place? And number 2, archdemon? So, and we are of no level to be messing with the forces of hell. So fear ripples through the whole group. And he goes, yes, the pieces of an archdemon. This vault has been broken into, and the pieces have been scattered across the city and placed into the hands of different factions. And we cannot allow this because none of these factions are good. And should they decide to forge an alliance, to make a deal with the devil and put these pieces back together, Exodia the Destroyer, or whatever you want to call him, they just called him the Wicked Master. I poked fun because it sounded like Exodia. Exodia the Destroyer is going to level the whole freaking city. So I want you to go after each one of these groups and recover the pieces so that we can put them back in the vault, reseal it, put holy symbols all over it, tie a chain around it, put Taoist spells all over it and all that good stuff. And then I'm going to dig a big hole and bury it under the whole damn city. And that way no one will ever break into it again. And we go, okay, so, go fetch. Fine. I think it's a great idea. And we go, well, what pieces are there? It's not like, left arm, left leg, right leg is. And he goes, no. It's a tooth, a bone, a claw, a horn, and a hoof. And I go, okay, all the hard pieces. So there's no, flesh. There's no, there's not a talking head in a broom closet somewhere. He goes, no. It's all the pieces of bone and bits that have not been eaten away by time are remaining. And should they ever be united to the same spot and the proper spell cast, then the soul of this archdemon will rise up from the blah-de-blah abyss, and the flesh will fill back in along with whatever else is missing, and he'll be alive and will wreak havoc. And we go, okay, so we have to go get the 5 pieces and put them back in the vault before these 5 factions decide to align themselves or otherwise make a deal with this archdemon from beyond the veil. And we're like, okay, let's go. And we don't really have a setting off point because this city is plagued by a lot of gang violence, a lot of racism, especially towards dwarves, because there's no mountains anywhere, there's no tunnel systems towards any dwarven kingdoms anywhere, so these people don't know how to handle being around dwarves, and they're basically second-class citizens. All the low-income areas that are all ratty and ruined that I was telling you about, that's 90% dwarves. So there's a lot of territory wars going on, a lot of gang violence, a lot of roaming rogues in the dark alleys of the night. And we go, okay, well, we're going to have to go into the bad part of town and start asking questions. And we immediately find out that a lot of the gangs have been united under a single person. His name is Edmund, and he's an alchemist. And there's a plague spreading around the ruinous part of town called the Taint. And apparently the Taint can be brewed by Edmund in a black vial of nasty, and all he has to do is scratch you with it, and you turn into a monster, like a big gelatinous Cthulhu worm beast that, there's no getting you back. There's no cure. It's just molten death that mutates you into something from which you will never return. Whether you're alive or dead, he's just got to pour it in your throat, pour it on a knife and scratch you with it, put it in an injector needle and put it in your back or whatever. It doesn't matter. It's like the rage virus. It just mutates you into a 3-story flobber worm from Dune or something, and you drip with ooze and you poison things and you eat things and you go out of control. And apparently it's all the guard force of this city can do, but to keep that out of the nice part of town. So the lower end of the ruinous part of this city is basically anarchy right now. And if you don't keep your weapons out, keep your hands where everybody else can see them, it's dog eat dog out there, and there's a fine line. Like I said, it's almost like the Berlin Wall, where it's one side super nice, the other side is ruinous calamity. And, there's a line of paladins and guards and fighters and archers on rooftops and stuff like that, people that check you when you're crossing over into the nice part of town to make sure you don't bring the black taint across to the law-abiding citizens. So it's a very like yin-yang style city that's just split itself down the middle. And we start to wonder, well, if this guy Edmund has been, uniting all the gangs with the idea of turning people into monsters, what's his end game? Does he want to destroy the city? Does he have a greater plan in mind? Does he know or have one of the pieces of the archfiend that we're pursuing to put away for good? So we get a name straight away, which is great. So we go to the what was it? Let me check my note. The Full Health Tavern, because LOL, Full Health Tavern. And this is where Spoony usually shines, because he can go up there with his lute and do a bardic performance. And of course, we got tons of money straight away to spend when we were making our characters. So since Spoony wasn't a combat character, I stacked all of his magic items, his lute, his shirt, his hat, and stuff, to enchant them to up his performance, because for every 10 points in performance you get, if you perform in front of a crowd, you can get money. So like a 10 or better is 1d6 gold, or a 20 or better is 2d6 gold, and on up the chain, and that will go up the chain, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But I was basically throwing 20s and 25s when we first started, and like raking in little amounts of gold just from like singular dice throws, while the other members of the party were kind of like listening in on other people's conversations, flirting with the bartender to see if he'd seen Edmund the alchemist around lately, if there had been any patterns to his attending this tavern, if any of the bar wenches had slept with his cronies, if they ever saw which direction they ended up going, etc., etc. And the bartenders don't know much, but one of the whores does. She works in the kitchen and she makes money on the side, spreading her legs for whoever's got the coin. And Spoony is throwing, again, 20s, 25s, and he's got the high charisma. And yes, I'm halfway through college. I hadn't met my fiance yet. I brought the hornball bard to the table. This was my role. So I was like, I wonder if I could seduce information out of her, because if you want to find out a lot about bad people or people you not ought to be talking to, you can talk to a bartender, a whore, a pimp, the cutthroat people that are dealing poison wares. And I was like, I wonder if she knows anything. And the DM throws it for the percentile chance. Does she know or does she not? And I was like, okay, I seduce her. And we go, okay, so while Spoony's back there railing this woman, trying to get information out of her in the meantime, what are the rest of you guys doing? And the Dwarven Defender and the Sorcerer get into an argument. And I don't even remember what it was about. But they basically start a bar fight between each other. And the Dwarven Defender, I don't know what his problem was. Like, he had a lot of... I don't want to say he had a mental disorder. He had, like, social anxiety, so he was very easy to, like, tip a little to make him mad at you, and in games he would come after you, whether you were on his team or not, or he would make you fail, or he would try to PvP with you. Oh, he PvP'd with the Sorcerer, or at least he tried to. Because when you stack a character with a lot of magic against a character with not a lot of magic, it goes about as well as you can expect. So they're fighting. The fight drags into other tables. Those people start fighting. Bar wenches are hitting people with giant glass mugs. The bartender's trying to shout people, sit your fuck down, get out of my tavern. Do all these different things. There's no guards here. We're in the bad part of town. So a huge bar fight breaks out, and they fight gang members. They fight bar wenches. They fight each other. The rest of the party's in the corner like, oh, God. And they only, like, defend themselves when they have to. And And just, it goes on and on and on until like the tavern basically clears out because everybody's got black eyes, everybody's got missing some hair from a fire blast. You know, people that have broken stuff are trying to get out before they get the bill, etc., etc. And Spoony comes out like redoing the front of his pants, like, what happened? and everybody's like, you wouldn't believe us if we told you. And I go, I'm the bard. You know, things usually happen in taverns when I'm there. What happens when I'm not here? And they're like, shut up, Spoony. What did the bar wench say? And I go, oh yes, oh gods, yes. And he goes, about Edmund, dumbass. and I go, did the barmaid tell me anything once I was through with her? And the DM goes, well, we'll throw your diplomacy or intimidate if you like. And I go, I'll throw diplomacy. So I throw diplomacy, 19 plus all my charisma plus all my ranks. And I was like, I think she probably told me something. And he goes, well, in the midst of your coitus, you know, you dragged the information out of her that she didn't know where Edmund was, but there was a infamous drug house X number of blocks over in the broken part of town where only the most desperate of druggies go and only the most potent product comes out. And I go, wow, damn. And I go, well, if Edmund is a drug lord or a uniter of all these different gangs, and he's controlling the greater part of the underbelly of this city, I bet he's probably got his hands in the drug trade. And if he's peddling, you know, the black taint, you know, if he mixed that with drugs and then started passing it out to people, you know, it doesn't take 5 seconds. It could take several days before it invades your system and turns you into a monster. That'd be one of the primary places to look. I mean, if you're not putting it in like milk and bread, you know, drugs would be a good place to start. So we go, okay, we've got to go to this place and see, A, if Edmund is there, and B, if this is one of the distribution points for the black taint. And we haven't really made a connection between like the black taint and the archdemon, but they kind of go hand in hand, because if Edmund is controlling all these people, chances are he can talk to a lot of other factions. And if they figure out what they've got, then it's going to be bad. So we've got to get our hands on Edmund before things go super, super bad. And we go, okay, we're going to go to this drug house and see what's what. So we head over to this place, you know, once we've paid the bill. We ended up leaving a lot of money at that tavern. I think Spoony handed over all the money he made from playing the lute to the bartender to replace all the broken furniture. We handed over money for broken bottles. You know, we basically got stuck with the tab from this 40-person bar fight. It was amazing. And I was like, you know, once we're done paying for all this crap, we've got to head over to find out what's going on in this drug house. And we go deep into the bad part of town. There's like dwarves squinting at us from every corner, leaned up on the corners. You can see daggers on bandoliers across their chests. And there's pimps on the corner, and freaking people getting dragged into alleys and shanked in the sides. It's like, don't look anyone in the eyes. Don't talk to anybody. Just go about your business. You know, there are no guards here. There are no police here. There are no paladins that are going to come save us. And you know, Dylan goes, I'm a paladin. And I go, you're one guy. This is half the damn city. And he goes, oh yeah, you're right. I've only got so many healing spells to help you with. So try not to get shanked by an angry dwarf. And we're like, yeah, try not to get shanked by an angry dwarf. And sure enough, we get jumped on the way, because we've got like a little card with an address on it. And as soon as we get jumped, Rhino, our monk, eats it straight away. Like, they don't need to know where we're from. I eat the piece of paper. And we get weird looks, because it's like as soon as they stopped us, he's like, It's like, what's wrong with him? I don't know. You know, your money or your life, whatever the hell's wrong with him. So we get into a fight with a bunch of cutthroats, and, you know, with versus a wizard, a sorcerer, etc., etc., it goes about as badly as you might expect. But these guys are rogues, so they've got, you know, once both groups have collided with each other, they've got flanking, they've got backstab, and backstab hurts a lot when you get into the mid to upper levels. So they were doing just as much damage to us as we were to them because of, like, the conga line. So it was like bad guy, good guy, bad guy, good guy. You know, they can turn back and forth to provide flanking for each other, and it did not go well. We suffered a lot of damage. We beat these guys down and killed most of them, and a couple of them ran, but not before we took a great deal of damage. So Dylan had to stop and pass out healing spells, and Spoony had to, you know, play the lute to lift everybody's spirits and, you know, make sure we weren't demoralized by such a close victory, a close encounter. And we almost got jumped a second time. I was like, can we just, like, run this time? You know, they're not on both sides of us, and we just got done fighting those guys. So the cutthroats here are thick and not that far between. So one fight almost started another fight. So that's how bad it is around here. And we're like, we've got to rush for this address so we don't get jumped like 5 times. We're just going to, like, you know, quick travel pace, walk as we go, because if we run they might chase us. But we, like, you know, gather your cloaks around yourselves, friends, we've got to make it there before we go. And sure enough, our female wizard gets like cat calls and how much for a night with you, lass, and stuff like that. It's just this wretched part of town. It's like, which one of you is her pimp, and, you know, how much, and it just, you know, what are you buying? And then stuff like that. The guy from Resident Evil that opens his cloak, what are you buying? And we run into all different number of nasty people selling gross things, and you know, skooma and poison and fancy daggers that have crystalline blades that break off when you stab somebody so they can't pull it out, and all kinds of just grossness that is in the nasty part of town. It's like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And we get there, and it's this big house, like a big house. I mean, it's dilapidated. All the windows are knocked out. But it's this big house with its own, like, little courtyard. This would have been really nice when the city was new and well kept for before this part became a slum. Slum! That's the word I was wanting that whole time. I kept saying lower part of town. I meant slum. And we get there. It's this big 2-story house, like a mansion. And I was like, okay, it's a drug den. What's the plan? Should one of us go in and pretend to be a druggie? And you know, our wizard has alchemy, so she could scan over whatever they're selling, you know, tell us what it is, tell us if the black taint is in it. You know, we could ask around about Edmund, you know, grease a few palms and see what's what. And they go, well, why don't we case the joint first? Let's look in the windows. There's no windows. They're just busted out. And we go, okay, well, you pick that window, you pick that window. We kind of like fan out around this one building, checking over our shoulders as we go, because we don't want, you know, super rogue number 57 to jump out of the woodwork and stab us in the back, because God knows Spoony's not wearing much in the ways of armor, so he's the easiest target here. Because the Dwarven Defender's got all the armor, the Sorcerer and the Wizard can defend themselves, the Paladin can heal, and the Monk basically can't be stabbed because he can't be caught. Spoony's kind of the weak link here when you're in a dangerous area. It's like, I hope I don't get shanked. I hope I don't get shanked. Like looking up over the window ledge to spy for these people, or to spy into this place. And our DM looks over at our sorcerer and goes, you know, so-and-so, you peek into like what looks like what used to be a sitting room. It's got ratty furniture and all the windows are busted out and the floorboards are nasty and there's mold going up the walls and stuff. But you can see a pair of guys in there with a horn-shaped bong, sipping like fell fell steam, fell poison in the form of smoke out of this with little cable sippers, and I go, a demon horn bong. And then Tenacious D in the Pick of Destiny rushes over my mind. I was like, oh my god, movie reference. Okay. Because everybody loves Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny. But I was like, oh, it's an archdemon who is incomplete and we're looking for the pieces. Okay, I get it. And if you haven't seen that movie, go see it. Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny is everything that rock and roll should always be. But, and I go, well, if that's the demon's horn and there's two guys there, now's the time to grab it. I'm sure Edmund probably wouldn't be a slave to his own product because most drug lords are not. So those are probably just cronies. And if they're in there by themselves, we should jump them right away. And our sorcerer reaches to undo the latch and open the busted out window, but when he touches it, it's still there's a magic barrier there. So the glass doesn't matter. The fact that the glass is busted out doesn't matter. It's protected by something. And then he feels around. It's like a force field in Star Trek. It just kind of extends around the whole building. So if Edmund doesn't want you getting in, then you're not getting in. He's like, well, we may as well use the door, because if we have to take this barrier down, then they're going to know we're coming. There could be an alarm spell on the doors and windows and stuff. So somebody with money is protecting this ruinous house that's housing this horn. And, we step up, and the wizard and the sorcerer kind of confer with each other. Do we dispel it? Do we break it? Do we, they do all their magic talk while the rest of us are standing there waiting for them to do their magic thing. And Spoony's constantly looking around, holding his loot to his chest, like he's expecting to get mugged any second. Because it's a +3 loot, or a +3 to perform loot, so it's expensive and nice and made of red cedar wood. So carrying something that expensive out in the open is not a good idea, but that's all he can do during battle is do the inspirational tunes. Because he, like I said, he's got a rapier, but he can't use it very well, so meh. And after a while, the wizard and the sorcerer are like, okay, we've got the proper algorithm to the magic. They're role playing this out pretty well. We've got the proper algorithm of magic, and between the two of us, we will be able to bring this barrier down. And we go, okay, Spoony, pass out your battle, your great battle shanty and all that good stuff. Give us the +2 that we all want before the battle starts. And our monk is getting into his kung fu pose, and the dwarven defender pulls up his shield and his hammer, and the wizard and the sorcerer go, okay, bah, and they bring the barrier down. It's like watching the shields on starships just go down into the ground. And we're like, okay, and Jason, the dwarven defender, rushes in, and I kick the fucking door in, bam! And I was like, the door, and the DM goes, the door flies right off the hinges and across the foyer into the wall before it bursts into pieces. Everybody in the building knows you're there. And he goes, that's the point. And we all, the 6 of us, rush in like Power Rangers style. Ha! What mere rogues and drug dealers and druggies are going to be able to take us on? And then as soon as we rush through the doorway, we're not in a house anymore. We're out in the middle of the woods. And I go, what happened? What happened? And we look over at the wizard and the sorcerer and I go, did we just go through a dimension door? And our DM kind of grins and interlocks his fingers, and they go, oh god, they rigged the front door with a dimension door spell so that when you bring the barrier down and you go inside, it takes you somewhere else, and they know you were there, so they put the barrier back and they reset the spell. I bet all the windows are like that too. They just sends you elsewhere, outside the city. And the DM goes, yeah, this forest stinks. It smells like smoke. Like the forest is on fire? Well, it could be. Great, now we're miles away from the fucking city, tens of miles away. Who knows where we are? And we go, are there any landmarks here? And he goes, no, but that hill over there is moving. And I go, the hill is moving? And he goes, yeah, you look over and you can see a great tri-topped head looming out over the trees, just ripping trees out of the ground. This just like giant kaiju thing is ripping trees out of the ground and chewing them up in its massive jaws while its tail swishes through the underbrush and scatters other trees like matchsticks. And we all just stare slack-jawed. This Dimension Door spell sent us God knows how far away into a forest that hosted a Tarisk. And for those of you that don't know, a Tarisk is basically the ultimate monster in D&D. It's Godzilla. It's Cthulhu. It can't be stopped. Unless you're like level 20 and you have a wish ring or you have a dimensional rift or a black hole to send it to. And I go, what? We're like level 8. And he dropped us in front of a Tarisk. And I'm looking at the DM and I was like, there's something wrong with this. And I lean over to Rhino, our monk, and I was like, something's wrong. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, it's a Tarisk. And he goes, yeah, if there was a Tarisk, we would have heard about it. The continent, the world over, would know that the World Eater, no matter what remote forest he was in, would be alive and eating stuff and terrorizing the land. You know, we would have heard about it in the city. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, yeah, you're right. And I go, this doesn't make any sense. And Rhino looks at me and goes, you know, you're right. It doesn't make sense. In fact, it can't make sense. And I go, what do you mean, Rhino? And everybody looks over at Rhino and he goes, and he kind of like interlocks his hands into a monk stance of peace and serenity. You know, take your cleansing breath. And he goes, I choose to disbelieve what I see before me, that there is no Tarisk to be had here, and that there is no forest. And our wizard looks over and goes, not believing in something doesn't mean it can't chew your ass to pieces in 2 bites. And he goes, yes, if it's real. And the table goes silent, and the DM's smile falls. And Rhino puts this finger up like he's about to tell everybody this atomic secret. And he goes, we just broke into a drug den. And we saw those 2 guys smoking out of a demon's horn with fell magic and green smoke standing everywhere. What's to say that what we see around us is not a drug trip? And we all just happen to be sharing the same delusion. And we all just gasp, like he just blew the gasket right off this campaign. And he goes, I disbelieve. And our DM kind of smiles and nods and goes, make a will save. And he rolls really high. And, you know, we all make our rolls. And we go, I disbelieve, I disbelieve, I disbelieve. And the Tarisk disappears. And the forest disappears. And we're standing in the middle of a foyer that is shrouded with thin green smoke right at like head level. It's from the ceiling right about to our chins. And we duck down and we go, the magic barrier was keeping all the drug smoke inside, and the demon horn, I'm willing to bet, amplified that like tenfold, so there was no air. And as soon as we opened the door, it all rushed out into our faces, and we got a face full of whatever they're smoking. And we imagined whatever nastiness we wanted to, and we decided on a Tarisk in the middle of a forest. And now we're back in the house, and we're either semi-immune or not affected anymore by the drugs, but we've got to like hunch ourselves so we don't get another lung full of whatever that grossness is. And we go, okay, we've got to go get this demon horn and pour all the drugs out and take it back to Jameson. And like we run into the sitting room, back to our Power Ranger pose. and the guys are like, whoa, whoa, man. And their eyes are all bloodshot. They can't even sit up straight. And Rhino runs across the room. It's like, I grab the horn and I pull the cables out and I dump out the drugs and I hold it up. It's ours. And they try to like grab onto his legs or something, but they're so stoned out of their damn minds. It's like, you just walk away. There's no fight to be had here. And he goes, wait, we have to ask them about Edmund. And we kind of like shake them by the shoulders. Wake up, come back to reality. What? But what is reality, man? And just stuff like that. Just they are in another time zone. They are in another zip code because they were not getting any fresh air and using this demon horn like a bong. And I was like, I don't think we're gonna get anything out of them. And they're like, yeah, you're probably right, but we probably shouldn't linger because as soon as, any customer or drug dealer comes in here and sees that the barrier is gone, the door is open, and the horn has been taken, half the damn city might come looking for us. We don't know. We do find out that it was Edmund's drug den, though, because there's letters and papers on one of the desks that's denoting like gold exchanges for raw materials, again, like skooma and crack and all. He named like 5 or 6 like fantasy drugs, Arthas tears and all these different things. And obviously the black taint was not listed because you don't want people to know you're mixing that into your drugs, or nobody would buy it. Kind of like the fear gas from the Dark Knight movie, but I don't know if this game predated the Dark Knight series. I think it did. Oh well. Anyway, so there was something else in the drugs, but it turns you into a monster instead. So Rhino's got the horn, and he like puts it in his belt. He's like, okay, we've got to take this back to the vault. It's probably not a good idea to like wander around and find them all and then take them back, because God knows if all 5 of them touch and it comes back to life or whatever, it's not going to be good. So we go all the way back to Jameson without getting jumped, thank goodness. And we learn a bit more about each other. We open the vault, we put the horn in like a canister, and the canister goes into the wall and it hisses airtight shut, and then we put, again, like Tau spell markers on it and splash it with holy water and put seals on it and wrap it in plastic and all that other crap and shove it in the wall and then close the panel so it's as secure as it's going to be. And we turn the dial and the safe is locked. And we come out and we close the vault. So 1 out of 5, not bad. And Jameson congratulates us and he gives us a bunch of money, and we're up on like a 5th story building, so it's pretty. He's in the high end of town, and Jameson says, "Well, you've gotten the first piece of the archdemon, and rather quickly at that. Why don't you guys take the day off, or take a few days off for your enjoyment, for your sanity, for your wounds to heal, etc." Basically, the DM giving us downtime so we can actually make items if we want to role play, talk with each other, etc., etc. And we find out a little more about each other. Like Rhino decides that he's going to go work the stalls at the nearest stables, so he's like mucking out the stables for gold, and that's fine, even though as a monk, money isn't really much of anything, but I guess if he spends it right away, he doesn't have wealth. I don't know how that worked, but there's lots of different flavors of monk. And we find out that Rhino can actually speak a lot of different languages. He knew like Common, Elven, Draconic, Abysmal, and a few other like forbidden languages. He actually had a very high stat for learning other languages. So like that was his discipline as a monk. Like while he was doing push-ups and sit-ups and like doing the electric chair for 8 hours at a time, he always had a book in front of him. So he knew like 8 languages. I was like, wow, that's really good to know. And then we went over to Dylan, the paladin. And Dylan unfortunately did not think especially deeply about his character. When he heard the DM say demon slaying, he built a demon slayer. That was kind of it. He made a paladin that had like extra smites per day, who specialized in killing demons. You know, basically like the power gamer that picks the fighter and then throws all their stuff into hitting harder. That was basically what he did, but it was with a paladin instead. So we had a few heal spells off to the side while he was doing extra smites per day. So and what was it? Our wizard specialized in enchanting armor. She didn't really get the opportunity to, but that was kind of just part of her backstory, because enchanting armor takes a long time depending on the price. So X number of days of downtime equaled X number of items that she could enchant. So it was like she could do X number of 100 gold per day of enchanting, etc., etc. So she could go look for work off to the side, and she was well known enough to be able to do that. So she was very talented. And our utility sorcerer was much the same, but I think he specialized in like magic rings or something. And when you've got 6 party members, that's a lot of magic rings, because you got the left hand and the right hand. Can you use 2 rings in 3.5? I think you can. 1 for each hand. Yeah, that's right. So he set to work making magic rings, even though they were like +1 protection, you know, +5 fire resist, etc., etc. He made a slow fall ring for Rhino, even though he was going to have slow fall soon anyway. So they gave him like double slow fall, so he could fall from like a skyscraper and not hurt himself. And then there was Jason, our dwarven defender, who his entire like plot line, his storyline was that he was looking for his wife. And again, a lot of racism, a lot of nastiness towards dwarves in this city. So people would wonder why he wasn't off in the slums, living the slum life, I don't know, in the poorer part of town, when they saw him wearing all this nice armor and jeweled weapons and a great, you know, a slab of steel for a shield and stuff like that. They'd try to pick fights with him. And he was the kind of guy that would just answer all the fights until he was just on the ground from fighting too many people. He probably got more XP than the rest of us just by picking fights with the people that tried to insult him. But real negative guy, real just even like the slightest poke, he'd try to start PvP with you. He'd want to duel with you. He'd start bar fights, just things like that. Out of the 6 of us, he got along with everybody else the least. So, but his thing was he was looking for his missing wife. So he had all the rights to be grouchy and not especially sociable, because he was afraid maybe his wife was being sold into dwarven trafficking, into, you know, the prostitute's life, into the slave's life, etc., etc. But all of his leads pointed to her being somewhere in this city, and no matter who he asked, no matter where he went, he was always one step behind. And we were starting to get the feeling that maybe Edmund might have had a hand in like prostitution and dwarven trafficking, as far as basically running the slummy end of town. And so anytime we were in a tavern, anytime we went and talked with a new group of people, he would pull out like the locket with the picture in it and say, you know, have you seen this woman? Have you seen my wife? And he'd grab people by the collar. Do you know this woman? Etc., etc. And it just didn't happen. He looked and he looked and he looked during that set of downtime. Spoony, on the other hand, again, I brought the hornball bard to the table, so I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the tavern, listen to local rumors, and find myself a couple of barmaids. And DM's like, all right, fine. You know, roll your perform. And he pulls it up, and he's like, you hit 29 total. And because, again, I've been spending my money on performance. Now that I say it this way, performance-enhancing items. So the hat helps with performance checks. The loot has a +3 on it. One of my rings from the sorcerer had a +perform on it. just stacked everything into perform because, according to the rules, if you break 30, you can attract the attention of extraplanar beings. Now that means elementals, demons, angels, gods, demigods, outsiders, whether for good or for ill. But once you break that 30, interesting stuff starts to happen. And Spoony wasn't quite there yet in terms of having enough items to make this happen. But he was almost there. He got the 29, and he goes, okay, you get 2d6 plus 1 or 2d6 plus 2 gold in your performance, and you find yourself sandwiched between 2 buxom barmaids for the evening. And I go, yes. And I go, well, and they look up to you like a rock star. It's basically like fast food sex. They're just all too eager to lift their skirts for you. And so there's this long, drawn-out, like, porno scene of Spoony and the 2 barmaids at the Full Health Tavern. And I go, and he goes, once you're done pounding each one of them, and they're done worshiping your cock, because that's clearly all you're here for, one of them makes mention that, surely you will join so-and-so in the Hall of Musical Legends someday here in town. And I go, the Hall of Musical Legends? And she goes, yes, it is known, the legendary instruments of bards and performers and musicians and orchestra conductor batons and such all end up at this museum of great musical achievement. And I go, really? And I go, really? I bet some of those instruments might be enchanted. And I go, I wonder if I could find like a better loot. Like it's not really occurred to him that taking something from a museum is stealing. Or to me, rather, it's not really occurred to me that taking something from a museum is stealing. But I think, well, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, we had a demon's horn in a drug house with 2 guys, and I go, I wonder if the DM is really doing this. I wonder if we're going to find the demon's tooth in the, like, as a guitar pick, in the Hall of Music and Musical Achievements, this museum. And I go, I bet that was the next hint for the next bit. So Spoony snuggles in with the buxom barmaids, knowing where the next bit of this adventure is going to go. And the rest of the party is off doing productive things. But, like I said, I brought the hornball bard to the table, so I've got a woman under each arm, and I know where we're going next, so I feel like I've contributed something. So, I guess that's where we'll stop for today. So I hope you enjoyed that story, and we will pick it up next time here on D&D Stories. Keep gaming.
Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hit that like button if you did. Be sure to check me out on Facebook, and if you're feeling really generous, support me on Patreon. If you'd like to hear more stories by me, you can check out my audio novel right here. It's free. Keep gaming!